Hello, welcome to RPG Tips again. This is episode 6 of Stories of Bardoba, a solo role-playing campaign in which the dice decide the story. I'm Jose and I'll be your player and game master. In our last episode, episode 5, Vesna infiltrated successfully, he was caught, but he infiltrated the camp of the evil Amun-Kus cultists, where we discovered that the area was divided in 3 different parts. The first one, the cult tents, where the warriors of Amun-Kus, who were dressed in very elegantly crafted bluish metallic and golden armors, were residing, including the main tent of the high priest. There was also another part behind that, but since we came from the northwest, from that area, we didn't see it yet. And the last part, the third one, was a rocky formation that had been covered, which is where the peasants that were following the cult had their makeshift barracks. Vesna, through dumb luck, got caught by a warrior of Amun-Kus, but the warrior confused him for a peasant, so he instructed him to go back to the rocky formation, to barracks. There we saw how the peasants were well fed, but there was an astounding number of them who were ill, with a sickness that made them seem extremely weak and die. Through Mythic's cruelty, we had a random event in which we witnessed how a poor kid died in the arms of his mother. And Vesna got close to them, talked to them, and on one hand we promised them that we would bury their son using rites that are forbidden in this camp, but on the other hand we discovered quite a lot about the cult. It seems that in lots of villages there is starting to be an infestation of green beetles that burrow into your body through your nails, and after some weeks you start feeling ill, your muscles disappear and you die. And we think that the cult is quite suspicious about this infestation because they are the ones going to the villages saying, hey, if you come with us, you'll be safe from this. All in all, it sounded like they were repeating the White Crusade, the period hundreds of years ago, in which an army of peasants rose up against Lamastis, the queen of the gods. Namely because they were amassing an extreme amount of riches. Now, with Amun-Kus and the cult, we can't probably be that sure about the real reason. But that's what we want to discover in this episode, because what we said that Vesna was going to do was to explore the camp, because we need to know if the body of Fanir is here, the cleric of Corias that was decapitated, and why they are going to the west, because the family also told us that they told them that they were in a holy pilgrimage to the west, so we need to know where are they going and why, what do they want to do. Because let's remember that they are also training them as an army, so this sounds creepy. Nevertheless, let's go back to the game. Scene 1. It's early morning, it's 9 AM, the sky is relatively clear and Vesna is coming out from the makeshift barracks of the peasants to try to explore the camp, especially to try to see what we can find on this part, where probably the body of Fanir will be found, hopefully. Now, of course, the first thing we must do is to see if the scene is altered or interrupted. Since we were caught by a guard, I'm going to raise the chaos factor to 6, so let's see what we have. That's a 5, so there's a random event. So the random event is a 99 NPC positive. Something good happens to an NPC. Now, being in this environment, we could have either the cultists, the peasants, Inula, or the people from the villages close, Whitebridge and Darkwell. Now, to make this fair to the environment in which we are, I'm going to roll 1d12. If it's 1 to 5, it will be the cult. If it's 6 to 10, it will be the peasants. 11, Inula. 12, the people from the villages. Now, based on the past, I'm sure that we're going to roll 12. Now, that's a 3. So something good happens to the cultists. Now, let's roll for an action to see what it is. It's 89. Attract. 62, disruption. They are attracting disruption. Attract sounds to me like they are gaining power, and disruption sounds like something that could cause a great commotion somewhere. So attract disruption means that they've gained something that is bad for us. It could be a new unit, it could be an asset, it could be a small object, or it could be a very large object, I don't know, like a catapult. So with equal probabilities, that's 1d4, let's see what it is. That's a 4, so they've gained a very large object. What is it? Description table. 55. It is something, interestingly, 62. Masculine. Interestingly masculine. I don't want to get that much into gender roles, so let's not do that, but I'm going to roll with the typical things associated with masculinity, so let's go with violence and aggressiveness. I'm picturing Vesna coming out from barracks, and he being startled by the clanking metallic sound of wheels coming from his right, from the north, and he jumping back at the sight of several peasants pulling from a very large cage containing a savage monster with several heads, a hydra of purplish color, with a body that can be easily 5 meters long, 4 different heads bashing against the cage constantly, and a warrior from Ankus next to it, poking it with a spear so that it calms down, unsuccessfully of course. The roars of the different hydra's heads are joined by the screams of joy of the cultists, the warriors, that come out to see the spectacle. As they show happiness, some of the peasants also come out to see, and at first they are scared, but once they see their joy, most of the worrying turns to nervous laughter, and they start talking between themselves, asking themselves what could this mean. Now, this is relatively bad because Hydra, but at the same time, it may be good, because probably most of the warriors of the cultists are looking at the Hydra on this part. So we can very stealthily come to this part and take a look at what this is. Okay, so what do we find here? I'm going to roll for its description to see what it is. So it is a part of the camp which is 22, daintily, 57, lethal, daintily lethal. Now here I beg your pardon because my non-native English doesn't know what daintily is. So I'm looking at it in the dictionary and it means fastidiously, delicately, with nice regard to what is pleasing, especially to the palate. Ceremoniously, with nice or weak caution, weakly. So something that's done with high regard to what is pleasing, and it's at the same lethal. Sounds very much like what these guys are wearing. Their weapons and armors are very delicate, very well crafted, but in the end they are tools of war, they are lethal. So this area sounds like an armory, well, a storage area focused around the armory. This is where they store their armors and their weapons, and also where they have all of the storage for the rest of the weapons and things that they are supplying the peasants with. So this is a storage/armory. I've just realized that we've just strolled over there without actually looking if there were any kind of guards, warriors in the area. This is nice because it allows me to cover my carelessness with Vesna's stupidity, but let's see if there's actually a guard around here. Let's say that this has a -4 because the arrival of Hydra is something that would really draw most of the attention, but just in case. So -4. Is there a guard around here? This is an 8, so there's not. And since both are even and the chaos die is 6, which is equal to our chaos factor, this is an extreme result. So extremely no, there's no one here. That's very good for us. So Vesna is just strolling around. I picture the area being built with lower quality tents. Same kind of materials and style as the good ones in the cult area, but probably older or with different colors, not as stylish probably. So Vesna is just walking around the tents, taking a peek, seeing rows and rows of armors and weapons inside. This is very good for us. Either we continue and search if they have any kind of tent in which they are keeping prisoners or corpses. Fine, we wouldn't be a prisoner. Or we could try to steal one of the armors and one of the weapons. Because, number one, they're probably going to be better than the ones we have right now. And number two, it would allow us to infiltrate ourselves in the tents, in the camp. Now I'm hearing most of you saying, well, the second option is dumb, but let's remember that Vesna, and most especially I, am dumb. So don't discard it yet. Here is actually one of the moments in which it would be very easy to roll a die and let randomness decide, but it is not something that I want to do because I want to keep my personal agency as a player intact, even though I'm playing solo and I'm also the GM. I still prefer to take the decisions of my character as much as possible. So we are actually going to do a mixture of both. We are going to grab the largest weapon that we find, and that Vesna is comfortable using, and then at the same time we are going to search for something. The way of mechanizing this is going to be doing the equivalent of a search roll in the area. So our first roll will decide if we find something, and then I'll make a second one to see if we were fast enough to do it before they came back. Actually, scratch that. First of all, I'm going to see which weapon we get. Now, to see which kind of weapon we get in our quick search, I'm going to roll 1d4. 1 is going to be an axe, 2 is going to be a hammer, 3 is going to be a spear, and 4 is going to be a sword. 4 is a sword. Now, we already have a short sword, so I really hope that we don't get another one. Now, one thing that could be good would be getting a long sword or a great sword, because those are extremely expensive and very good. So let's see what we get. 1 or 2 short sword, 3 or 4 long sword, 5 or 6 great sword. 2. Well, we get another short sword. Now there's one important thing, of which quality is it? Because if we had the time, Vesna would go into tent where the armors and weapons of the cult were stored. So I'm going to roll 3d6, discarding the lowest one, to get the actual quality, where 2 would be it's breaking and it's unusable, and a 12 would be it's probably enchanted or magical. And probably an 11 is that it's made out of fantastic material. We were so close, that's a 10, almost. So we basically get a very, very well crafted longsword. It's extremely polished, made out of steel, flawless, with some decorations with small gems on the pommel and the hilt. So we can probably sell it for more than the one that we're already carrying, but it's not going to give us any benefit in battle. It's alright. So Vesna is just entering one of the tents, just looking around quickly, trying to listen also at the same time to guards coming. And he sees a relatively small jewel in a pommel of something, he just takes it and puts it in the bag very quickly. Okay, and now our search for anything other than a storage or armory. Now there's no specific search skill in World Without Numbers, so I'm going to use Notice, for which we have nothing, so that will be a -1, and I'm going to roll it with Dexterity, because this search is based around being quick, moving between the tents and trying to get details. I mean, it could also be Wisdom, but I mean, I want to give him a chance. So this is going to be 2d6 with no modifiers, and let's assume a difficulty of 7, which is not too difficult but not super simple. So let's see what we get. That's a 10, so Vesna succeeds, surprisingly. I'm glad for him. So we find something. There's an area. So very quickly, is it a tent? 50-50? 14, yes. It is another tent, indeed, but once probably around here on the back part. Once Vesna is looking around, he sees that the entrance of the tent is open and there are no weapons or food or any kind of box visible. Okay, moment of truth. Vesna steps inside. Now I said that I was going to make several rolls. One of them was going to be if we found something, and another was going to be if we found something in time. So at the same time that Vesna gets inside, do we hear the guards coming back? I don't want to bias this. Let's make it 50-50. I don't know if they're coming back or not. Yes. That's a 13. So at the same time that Vesna is entering the tent, he hears the steps of probably 2-3 men with metallic boots clanking against the ground, just patrolling. And now, what do we see inside the tent? Let's go for a detail check for this from Mythic Variations 2, because I'm normally using the descriptions, but I really like the details also. Now, since our chaos factor is 6, the modifier of this roll is -2, so we get a higher chance of things being bad for us. So let's see what it is. 15, which means 13. 13 is Focus Thread. Now, as our thread, we had 2 options. Find Fanir's body and understand what they were doing with him, or find why the cult was going to the west. Again, I don't want to bias this. Let's randomize it. 1, 2, 3, Fanir. 4 to 6, the cult's plan. 5, the cult's plan. So here we find something related to why the cult is going to the west. And what is it going to be? Now, since this will tell us what they want to do in the west, I'm going to roll in the actions table. 38. They want to inform. 82. Dispute. They want to inform about or for a dispute. So if they want to inform, they are going to meet with somebody. And if it is about a dispute sounds like 2 sides were fighting over something. I normally don't like to chain rolls this much, but to understand this, I need to ask, who do they want to inform and what is this dispute about. So for the who, I'm going to go to the Adventures Crafter character generator. Okay, so we roll 1d100 again, and let's see who they want to inform. 28. The character is an individual, and now we roll for the descriptor and the identity. The descriptor is 68, a discipline 7. Roll for 2 identities. A discipline 78, scout, who is also 66, a crafter, a scout and a crafter. Okay, so I know what's going on here. When Vesna enters a tent, he's inside a rectangularly shaped tent with several small tables with lots of papers over them, and actually a map of Bardoba that I don't know right now how it looks, but you will see it here when I finish this, with several spots marked on them, some with a dot and some with a cross. Vesna recognizes Whitebridge, and it has a cross. Looking around the papers, Vesna manages to find a letter addressed to the shadow artisan Vanios, saying that the ritual to wrestle control of the wretched temple of the false goddess was a success, and that this person's, Vanios' theories were correct about the power of the sacrifice of Goria's clerics. So that would be the informed dispute part. And I assume that since we have maps, if Whitebridge is crossed, that means that they are talking about the temple. Does it say if they are heading back to the west, back to this shadow artisan, or if they are going to go to the rest of the pyramids probably? Since this was a very nice development, let's give it a +2, because it would make sense and we would get a nice clue. Well, it seems our luck is changing. This is a 16 + 2, that's 18. And since this is a 4, which is even, this is an extreme result. We extremely know what they are doing. So 1 or 2, they are going back to the shadow artisan. 3 or 4, they are going to the rest of the pyramids. 5 or 6, something else, because we haven't addressed actually the plague or the beetle. 4, they are going to the rest of the pyramids. So the letter continues. Given the success of our first attempt, we will continue with the plan as expected, raising and controlling the other centers of power. Now, does it mention anything about the plague or the beetles? Because why do they have an army? If they have a ritual to raise the pyramids, they can do that without actually destroying villages and getting them as an army. So does it say anything about that? Now, to balance that, I'm going to give that a -2, because I don't want to get all of the clues here. And it seems I was too fair, because we got a 12, which -2 is 10, so it doesn't say anything about that. Is it signed? Let's give this a +4. 11, 15, so yes, it is signed. So who is it signed by? I'm going to assume that this would be the main guy, but now I need a fancy title. Now again, I don't want to put the GM's hat too much, so let's at least generate a description to see if we can get an inspiration that is biased by Mythic. So that's an 82, perfectly. The title is perfectly 99, weak, humble servant. I was actually going to go to something very epic like Pontifex or Dark Cleric or Dark Cardinal, but we get something perfectly weak. So humble servant. So your humble servant, and now in the name, Brag. Your humble servant, Brag. Now, I don't like to screw up Vesna more than I should, but since we are in what looks to be the core of the camp, or one of the most important parts, it would make sense that some guards would come to this area. So first of all, is Vesna attentive enough while reading the letter to actually also listen to his surroundings? Let's give that a difficulty of 7. Since our wisdom is 7, he got a point through the adjustment that I told you about. Our wisdom is 7, so we got a -1. And we don't have any points in notice, so we have a -1 for that too. So we have a -2. See, the difficulty was 7, now we need 9 or more. I really hope that no one's coming around. That's a 10. That's a 10 -2, 8. That's more than 7. So while he's reading that, he's also trying to see if somebody comes. Now, does he hear anybody coming? Let's give that a +2. Now, won't you see that 9 + 2 is 11, so yes, he hears somebody coming. Is there anything here that we could hide behind? Let's go with +2. Yes, because this is a total of 18, but since the chaos die is below our chaos factor and it's odd, we get a random event. So the event is 65, PC negative. Now what happens to Vesna? I'm going to run the actions table. 18, move, 38, path, move path. So while Vesna is reading, he hears footsteps coming from both sides of the tent and people just chatting cheerfully. So he looks around and he sees that there's a row of several bookcases and chests, one of them open and apparently empty. So fearing he was going to be seen, he pockets the letter, and now I really want to get the map. Either we try to hide in the chest directly with no risk to be seen for now, or we try to get the map and then hide and we risk being seen. I don't know why we are adopting. Vesna is going to try to get the map, of course. So this is going to be a dexterity roll with difficulty 8. And we have a +1, so we may be able to do it. This is my fault. I completely agree, I accept that this is my fault. So Vesna is trying to take the map, but it has several stones and papers over it, so he doesn't manage to do it. So he just lifts it, goes below the table and tries to crawl towards the chest to run inside. Now, do we do it in time before they actually get inside? Let's give this another 8, so we may have another chance. I don't know how we're going to do this. I really don't know how we're going to do this. And since I don't know how we're going to do this, I'm going to end the episode here. When Vesna does a small leap inside the chest, he hears 2 voices. Hey, what are you doing here? While he hears that, the top part of the chest falls, closing it. And that's where we end our episode. Will episode 7 be the death of Vesna? Probably. I don't know. I hope not, but probably. What do you think will happen to Vesna when he's probably found? Will the chest be a dimensional door to another place? Will we be saved? Will we be executed? Is the Hydra going to eat us? I don't know, and I'm dying to find out. But that will be next Thursday in episode 7 of Stories of Bardoba. Bye bye. Oh, and thanks as always to Syrinscape for the amazing atmosphere and music. Make sure you check them out at www.syrinscape.com. You've just got to be using it at your gaming table.